Sketches for Portrait of Harriet. Take one. Ideas for the hymn for Harriet's hands. Sketches for Harriet's Feet poem. Take one. piece of mine was on YouTube, and somebody liked it. And that somebody happens to know the poet laureate. So it's the honor of a lifetime to get to work with the lyrics and Ashley's poetry. So the words that you will hear spoken are her words, and she is watching on live stream right now. Hello, Ashley.
downbeat. So it's 1, touch the blood,
and feel. So after I hear that little
that
thing,
chord, yeah.
Okay.
It's all.
Okay. Hello, friends. I'm pretty excited. Thanks for coming. I'm going to set it up on the little stand now and go downstairs. So have a good show. It's a fantastic concert. I know you guys will have a great time. And I'll see ya after the show. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Sorry for the late start. A few parking issues. One of the great things that I've been allowed to do as a member of the ASPA music department is to go and create repertoire for orchestras of this age group, where we look at the world around us. We find composers from groups that are not necessarily as represented. Last year we had a wonderful commission by Dr. Brian Neighbors. And through searching for music for one of our chamber groups, I came across a composer that I'd never heard about from New York City. And I talked to her a little bit, said, oh, do you have a symphony piece? And then in a strange sort of strategic meeting, completely different, had a conversation, and one of our creative writing staff was like, well, that sounds like a wonderful idea. I would love to write something that had music. So I put them in contact, and the creative process that they went through to come up with what we're going to premiere tonight, it's mind-blowing. There was a serendipitous meeting of philosophies, of music, of words, just some wonderfully interesting concepts. And one of the things that they agreed on was to honor a great human, a great spirit, and in particular, a great female icon. So Dr. Rebekah Griffin Greene was commissioned to write this work, a portrait of Harriet, looking at the life or the essence of Harriet Tubman. And to go with that, we had poetry written by our very own Ashley Jones. And to make it even more remarkable, Dr. Greene wrote a piece that incorporates the words and the poetry written by Ashley Jones. And for us to give this world premiere of a work like this is truly an honor. And we're very excited that they agreed to it and they came up with this remarkable piece of art. So to join us this evening, I'd like you to please welcome to the stage Ashley Jones.
with blood was made at the hands of an ungodly master. The eye of God pierced my head in two. The eye of God said, look, and I saw it. The eye of God showed me the rivers and fields and trees that would shelter me on my way. The eye of God told me I would not be enslaved. The eye of God showed me all the shades of my humanity, showed me how to see my people, my people, my people are the eye of God too. My people bloom from my brow. My people are the top of my head and the soles of my feet. My people are hurting at the hands of an ungodly master. My people have pierced me in two. My people said, look, and I saw them. My people showed me their blood in the rivers. My people showed me their blood in the fields. My people showed me their bodies in the trees and the shelter I could make for them on my way. My people told me they were not enslaved. My people showed me all the shades of my humanity. My people showed me how to see. My people how to see my God, and my people are made of the same cloth, the same blood. My people showed up in my vision, and I said, oh God, show me how to make a way. Did they hold your baby's cheeks and calm their weeping? Did they rise? Did they rise to meet the crater opened in your skull? Did they touch the blood and feel God pulsing there, loud and looming? Make the shape of prayer face to face. reach toward freedom. Their stop when danger blared ahead. Their quiet as you gripped the knowing pistol. It's warning, if you hold us back. Territory. She blossomed into freedom.
Amazing.
There is something truly remarkable always about being at the beginning of a great creation. We thank something truly remarkable always about being at the beginning of a great creation. We thank Dr. Green and Ms. Jones for being so wonderfully open to this bizarre idea that I cooked up about 10 years ago and finally was able to get it to happen.
Hello.
Hey, Ashley.
How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm going to turn up the volume here.
Okay.
Yes, you sound fantastic. It's so great
Great.
to see you.
Yeah. Good to see you. It seems like it's been a really long time,
I
actually.
know. I mean, it has been almost 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And I just have to compliment you on your earrings.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. A poet friend of mine makes these. So,
Very cool.
yeah. Mhm.
So I just is kind of like a post-project debrief a little bit because we didn't really get a chance to I don't know. I don't know about you, but I was very overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah, me too. I mean, it was like a whirlwind of just stuff. And then once it was over, I don't know, it just was like a release and then on to the next thing. Like I couldn't really process, what happened.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I mean, what was it like when you initially agreed to Maestro Fokkens. Like, did you have any expectations about what it would be like to work with a composer?
No, I mean, I've done collaborations before with different kinds of artists, but I had never done something where where my work was going to be integral to their creation process musically. I've definitely done things where someone has already composed something, or they already listened to a poem that I've written and they write something like around it, or other artists from other disciplines working with me or improvising to me as I read. But I'd never done anything where someone was literally going to be on the ground with me creating a thing at the same time as me. And certainly I've never had to perform in this very specific way. Like in the past, even now when I perform with people who play music, they're just kind of matching my energy, you know. But this was totally new and very scary. I mean, I was excited. And, you know, I'm excited about most things in life. I'm just that kind of person, but I also was very like, oh no, I don't want to mess this up. You know, I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like to stand there and like know what was going on musically. So yeah, I didn't have expectations exactly. I knew that it was going to be challenging for me to become a part of this world that I'm not a part of. So.
And if I can just share, like, I really enjoyed, since I'm a music educator, that's like my primary thing that I do. It's always interesting to me because I have like a way that I teach reading music. It was really neat to see how you approached the beats and writing in things, whereas musically, there's, you know, rest and, you know, counting and meter and time signature. You had your own notation that worked for you and that helped you as a, I don't want to say novice, but like,
you can say novice.
I mean, it was really neat and it worked for you. You had like actual like Arabic numbers, you know, written in.
Yeah.
And I've seen musicians write in everything from soup to nuts in their scores to help them cope with like, where do I come in here? I actually, when I was subbing on Phantom of the Opera and Broadway, I had my own score and I wrote in certain things as cues to help me when I was in the pit listening to the show. And then I found out after about almost a year of using my own part that I was supposed to use the part that was on the stand and not my own part. In fact, the conductor came over to me and said, you know, you're supposed, you know, oh, you're using your part, you know, and because then there might be a change or something. And so you have to use the official part that's like on the stand permanently.
Right.
And I had this moment where I was like, am I gonna get fired?
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh dear, I've been using my own one and I've been playing this note wrong because it's in this part and not the like the one that's permanently. Ooh, that was a scary moment, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, Broadway, super intense. But anyways, just to say, like I had to put my own markings, my own notes, and I was very proud of you for it's not like you're my student or anything. But I mean, as someone coming from sort of the outside, it was like, wow, she's really taking ownership of this and coming up with her own solutions. And I loved the inventiveness and the initiative that showed. Yeah, I mean, so now I'm really curious, like when you first heard the orchestra version that my husband recorded for you for the rap, like what was your initial reaction?
So I'm going to jump back and then get to this question because I wanted to say something about the counting too.
Yes.
Like there's so many things to say about that because that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yes.
because I haven't played music in I don't know how many years, since I was 11 years old, and I'm 32 now, so however many years that is. Have not read a single piece of music. And so I knew that was going to be my weak spot, and I've always been somebody who finds some way to make things work. So I was like, okay, cool, I just have to find my way in.
Yeah.
But the challenge was working with two very accomplished musicians who
Mm.
both had their own, like, y'all have it all in your head already, in whatever particular way y'all have it.
Yeah.
So that was the hard part for me, trying to learn from two different people at the same time who have different approaches. That was challenging. But once I found my lane, I was able to be much more confident in hearing what each person was saying and just filtering it through what I needed to know. But that was a huge challenge for me as a non-musician to, first of all, be intimidated by people who know what they're doing, and know, okay, they know the real way to do this. I'm doing it this weird little poet way, hopefully they understand.
It was fantastic. I mean, I cried in the first performance, and I was actually, when we got there, when I got there and I saw you rehearsing with Alex, who's the conductor who commissioned the whole project. Thank you, Alex. We're very, very grateful. It ended up being amazing. But I saw you rehearsing with him, and I was like, oh, to me, it just appeared like a Broadway rehearsal almost. You have the conductor and you have the soloist,
Mm-hmm.
and the conductor's working with the soloist. And so for me, that was like, he was just doing what I probably would have done. But there was an intensity present. And perhaps that was because we were kind of down to like a few days before the performance. So yeah, I definitely was feeling that intensity in the air. And
for sure, yeah.
When I first heard the rehearsals, I was a little afraid. And I was like, I mean, as a composer, you're kind of like a mad scientist / alchemist who is taking different elements and mixing them together, and you're not really sure if it's going to work. It's like a big experiment. Right. So I was just really glad to have you being open. I think Alex did the right thing by saying, here's my idea. Okay, here, you guys go. And just kind of let us go. And I think that was the right approach. And then I handed it back to him when it was all finished, but ultimately, and I asked him, I was like, is this okay? Are there any edits, that I should make? And he was like, no, it looks great. It looks fantastic. And I was like, as a composer, I was like, really? Composers, we use erasers more than pencils. Like,
oh, wow.
And I think maybe poets, I don't know if it's the same, but
yeah, that's actually true. We do take things away because you must,
yeah,
you have to refine what you have.
But yeah, so what was the other question? Oh, I was going to ask your reaction to like when you first heard my husband record the rap part. Yeah,
so like that also was a journey for me, because I've never done this before. I rarely hear someone else reading my work. It so happens that this year it's happened a few times. Like right when I left after the show, I went to another event and some students had memorized my poems and were reciting them dramatically. And one of the ones they chose was the one that I wrote for my dad's funeral, which like I cried. And I don't really cry in public, but I couldn't, like, it was amazing.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's been a cool experience in general to hear what my work actually sounds like. Because even though I wrote it, I mean, you maybe can understand this too, as a composer, like when you've just written something, it's just living in your mind, and it in your own voice or out of your own instrument. But when someone else says the thing or does the thing, you hear it for the first time. And that's such an interesting out-of-body experience, truly.
Yeah.
Like it's weird to say, like, I was so excited to hear my poems, but I was very excited to hear my poems in somebody else's mind, and in some ways to hear the words for the very first time, because when you're writing it, it's more of a feeling than anything else,
Yes.
So when I heard Terry's recording of the first piece, I first of all was like, wow, like this is a rhythm I never imagined. I never imagined it to sound this way. Because when I wrote that poem, it had like a much quicker sort of feeling. It was like a frenzied sort of thing. And interestingly, now after this experience, I do read that poem more slowly. And I think it actually is more impactful. Like I'm giving the words space in a different way because I was able to hear them in a different way. So when I heard the recording, I thought, okay, I can probably do this. Like, I feel like I can feel this beat. It sounds interesting. I mean, of course, it took a little getting used to because, again, I had never done this before. So I had a little trouble at first, like feeling how the poem felt in that beat. But I think really when it clicked for me was when I started practicing aloud at home, and I was like, really, I mean, everybody saw it. My parents, my mom and my siblings commented on how I was moving with the music, and I really couldn't help it. Like after I started practicing it and really feeling the intention behind it, even though it was my poem, I guess you see what I'm saying, like hearing it in that way and feeling it through my body, I couldn't help, but to move with it. And that was really exhilarating for me too, especially with the kids behind me. Like I felt like we were really making a train. We were making this thing together.
Actually, that was my sister's comment. She also cried when she heard it. She came to the evening performance with my dad, who surprised me in the hotel room, which was, I was like, I hadn't seen my father in a year, and I thought he was going to be in Germany actually.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
But he surprised me. So I was like sitting there with my sister and my father, and that was an out of body experience because I've been in New York for 22 years now. And so I left my family of origin, a long time ago, and it's been, I've had to create my own family. And that's been, I mean, God has provided in that way. That's amazing. But not to drift off, but Monica, my sister, actually said in her post, when she posted about it afterwards, she said that the orchestra became the hands and the feet of the freedom train. And she said it was actually really powerful to watch. And that really like moved me because I had not, I mean, even though I wrote the thing, I had not like conceived at how powerful it would actually be.
Yeah.
And one of my joys was actually having your words to work with and amplify. So it blesses me to hear that you came around after the first kind of like, whoa, that it blesses my heart to hear that like I was able to somehow contribute to, further artistry on your part. But when I first read your poems, as a musician, I took the words in, and also as somebody who is married to a person of color and has children who are in that legacy as well. I wanted to not do justice. That's not even the word I'm looking for. I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to celebrate the words that had come out of you that were so well put, and I wanted to amplify them. I wanted to make the words more powerful than if they were just spoken with no music. And I know it probably doesn't matter, but I think that's a lot of composers when they work with poets. That's kind of the intention. And the event that you brought me to was all poems by African American writers that were set by composers. And I'm not sure if they were composers of color or not. That's a good discussion. But it was because the words are stretched out. When I was listening to those poems, Langston Hughes and others, it did make me think about each word a little more than if I was just hearing it in passing. And the truth is that everybody interprets it however they want.
Right.
So that's one interpretation. But there can be many. And I can think of 5,000 other more experienced, more amazing composers than myself who would have taken a totally different approach. And, there are themes like, I don't know, 500 years ago that were popular themes, and different composers used to take the same theme and they would write a different set of variations on it. So I don't know. So it's interesting, like if somebody else had these same poems, like how would they have approached it? Like it's just interesting to think about from like an artistic point of view. I'll probably edit this out because it's boring.
It's not, it's interesting to me. I do wonder, well, actually, it's funny. Last night, I just got a message on Facebook from a composer who's looking to work with me on something. And I think he's working right now with a musician in Africa. Anyway, so that's interesting. But doing this project like kind of helped me get my feet wet, and understand how this could work. And the fact that it was so successful, I think is going to be helpful to both of us moving forward.
Sure.
Because we have this as a starting point,
Yes.
And I will say too, regarding how it all came together and the amplifying and just the comment that your sister made. And I think it's interesting that our sisters have similar names. My sister is Monique, yours is Monica.
Right.
But I think we both were working in service of the work and in service, of course, of other things like God, Spirit of Harriet, all of these things.
Absolutely.
But because I think the way that I approach writing is to always be in service and listening and obedient to the thing that gives me the words, which are not mine,
Right.
So because I think we were both on that wavelength, of course, the thing that was made, perfectly well, or made exactly how it was supposed to be.
Yes.
And I think people felt that, truly. I really think people could feel it moving through the room. I certainly felt it moving through my body. Now, of course, part of that time I was very carefully counting, so I couldn't feel it too much.
Yes.
I could only feel it as much as my counting would allow. But even watching,
time, if this gets performed again, I believe, like, if you're able to do this again, if the opportunity presents itself, you will get more and more comfortable. You might even get to the point where you memorize it and you're expecting that cue from the cymbals or something, and you'll be able to just flow. And it'll just be like, wow. And that's ultimately what practicing musicians want. They want to experience that flow. They want to communicate that flow to an audience. I think you did a tremendous job of communicating the flow to the audience. Don't get me wrong. But inside, you will be able to release like a little bit more and take even more ownership, if that makes sense.
Right.
This was so new.
It really was. I did get to a point where I could almost just start going without looking at the page. Not in front of people, but whenever I was practicing, I had my sheet there, but I was just like doing it without really looking at a certain point, because it was just hammering it in. And it did take me back to my band days when I had to memorize all the pieces.
Wow.
But I wasn't a great musician. I could not sight read at all. But
many cannot. Do not feel bad.
It's hard. I don't know how people do that. It's really, really hard. I can sight read a poem. Of course, I can read a poem with proper inflection on a first read for the most part, but music, no, like not at all.
The same decoding mechanism is the same. It's the same decoding mechanism. So it's just a matter of like practice. And you could do anything, Ashley. You could be a rocket scientist. Seriously.
Oh gosh, well, thank you.
I'm just saying, not that you ever would want that, but
no, you don't want me to be in space.
I know nobody wants me to be a bank manager.
Right.
I hear that.
Me either. I would be just like giving money to
I know.
poor.
I know. I'd be like, wait, how much do we have left?
Right. Let's just give this away.
I wanted to also compliment you on your outfit that you chose. That was very like 1940s.
Mhm.
almost Lady Day, you know, Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
The headpiece,
Mhm.
and people are gonna see this when they watch the video. I've never seen something like that. It was so beautiful. It was like,
Thank you.
yes, and all the bling, like as I was watching, and I'm just such a performer, you know. I like to be doing it. And last summer I did get to perform one of those poems. Um, and I'll probably splice that into this somehow. But I'm such a performer. But I had to stand back. Like I could not be a performer this time.
Mm.
So this was new for me. You know, I'm like the get your hands dirty pit musician. Get in there tonight. I have a Messiah gig. You know, I'm always teaching hands on, hands on, hands on, and this was hands off.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to, there was a lot of trust and there was a lot of faith, and I had to just release. And I just was like, okay, God, it's in your hands now. And all of that to say that I really appreciated some of the things that I noticed, like your outfit, you know, the bling, each small facet of rhinestones, from your beautiful open-toed shoes to your earrings, to the headpiece, to your beautiful, does it say black and proud?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I love that pin. So beautiful. Like all of that caught the light and it just augmented. And that's the beauty of live performance. I don't know if you regularly wear rhinestones when you read.
Kind of. I mean, well, I'll say this. I did choose that outfit very specifically for this performance, and I'll get into that. But I am someone who likes to dress like I'm always performing. Like that's kind of a way of celebrating myself daily, is carefully curating my outfits, dressing how I feel. I don't know, it's just something that has helped me through the years to fight against low self-esteem or any sort of insecurity. If I know I'm covering myself, you know, emotionally, spiritually, all of that, and literally covering myself in joy and pride and, you know, light, then I will feel those things throughout the day and I will reflect those things to others. So that's just daily. So you might see me on a regular day wearing some rhinestones. You might, but for performances especially, I kind of take it up a notch, so that I can feel like I'm matching the occasion. And for this occasion, I knew that I needed to feel like I was debuting with an opera or something. You know, I had to feel that way so that I could show up and be that person and not be in my head about the counts and not, you know, feel like, oh, what am I doing up here? I had to feel like that person. And so I had to look like that, you know.
That is professional. That is a professional performer mindset. My first time that I played Phantom in the Pit, I bought special boots.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore a goth looking black, you know, kind of almost tailcoat with this beautiful black full skirt. And I was dressed up. I mean, the pit players who have been there 30 years wear like socks. And I mean, they're really chill. Like they wear like blood splits, you know. But I'm like, no, this is really important to me. Rhinestones, everything to the max. Goth. I wanted to match Christine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it helped me get in the mindset.
Right.
When we first started working together, one of the beautiful stories that you told me when I asked the question, who is a female hero of our nation? You immediately said Harriet Tubman.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted you to share a little bit about why she's important to you.
Sure. This is like my number one story these days. I'm always telling people this story. And it's so interesting. You know, I didn't think about this story a lot until I had to tell it. You know, now that I'm a poet laureate, people are asking me, like, how did you start writing? And this story is something that's just been a part of my life for so long, but now I kind of understand why it matters to other people. So the story goes, I was a very, very bookish, nerdy child, as I still am today. I loved to read. My mom taught us all how to read super early. So I was like 3 years old reading books and watching Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, all that stuff. that was my fun, drawing pictures, dancing, singing, running around the house, imagining things, playing with dolls. Like, it was a charmed childhood, I have to say.
Wow.
So I was already loving creation and writing and reading. When I got to school, they kind of streamlined all of that energy, and they had us to write books every year. The school that I went to for elementary school was it still exists. It's a very unique place in that they value each child's creativity and their individuality. The school's name is EPIC, which stands for Educational Program for the Individual Child. And that was really true. Yeah. Yeah, it was a specialized school. I mean, it's a public school, but back in the day, our parents had to stand outside in line to register us. And like, a really beautiful memory is that my dad did the line standing when we were kids, and it was like cold, and the parents had to like camp out. It was ridiculous. But the parents who did it, had a special bond throughout our time, and even beyond, because they were out there in the trenches trying to get their kids in the school. Anyway, the school is incredible. It has no stairs, only ramps and elevators, because we had classmates who used wheelchairs or leg braces, and they didn't want anybody to feel like they weren't the same, which is not to say they wanted to erase the difference, but just to say they didn't want there to be barriers for us to be together. So when we walked places or rolled alongside, everybody was doing the same thing. And when I was in the second grade, I had already been writing books for other classes up till then. But in the second grade, I was given an assignment to memorize something that I had been reading. And as I said, I loved reading books. I loved learning. And my parents were also very, very adamant that we understood our history as Black people. So I was in a bit of a crossroads, personally, learning all these terrible things that happened to my people, and also, being an impressionable child.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, intellectually, I understood it was history, but as a child, all I could feel was scared and upset and confused. And so that resulted in me shying away from books about Black history, because I just didn't want to learn one more bad thing.
Gosh.
So yeah, I have a whole soapbox about all of that. But when I read this particular book, which was called Honey, I Love by Eloise Greenfield, all of that changed. In that book, it's poems for children, and there are illustrations in the book as well. There are Black children depicted, smiling. They've got beautiful afros, and they're just wonderful, happy children. And there's poems about everything, all aspects of their life, and also history. So there's a poem in there called Harriet Tubman. That's the poem which I chose to memorize. And seeing that book really made me understand that I could acknowledge my history, be angry about that, history, and celebrate who I am as a Black person, and not feel afraid, about what was done to us.
Mm-hmm.
Those people who did it are the ones who should be, wrestling with guilt and anger and all of that.
Yeah.
But as a Black child, I should be able to see the joy in my existence as well. So I memorized Harriet Tubman and got in front of my class, dressed up as Harriet Tubman, had like a little white dress, little white headscarf. And as I recited the poem to the class, and I was very shy as a youngster, I'm not shy anymore, but I was extremely shy as a young person. I stood up there and I said, Harriet Tubman didn't take no stuff, wasn't scared of nothing neither, didn't come in this world to be no slave, and wasn't going to stay one either. And I felt just like the most powerful person in the world. I felt like I belonged. I felt proud. I felt connected to my history. And I had never felt those things before in that particular way. And so that's when I began to write poetry. Harriet Tubman like delivered me, into poetry in a way. So she's so important to me for that reason and many others.
That is so beautiful. And my personal belief in heaven is like, there's some people that I just cannot wait to meet. And she's one of them. I'm sure there's a huge line of people and every single person is like, so how exactly did you do this?
Yeah, I want to know that too. Like how, literally how, because
yeah, just amazing, amazing. But you captured her so many things about her so well in the poems that you wrote for our portrait. And I was really just honored to be like, I mean, you were the mouthpiece, but I wanted to give a feeling. And I hope that that folks come away wanting to know more about her life and wanting to research, who she was more.
Right.
One of the little musical tidbits I did was I actually wanted to use the music of Florence Price, who was a really amazing African-American female composer of the 20th century. But her works are not public domain. So when there's that part in your poem that says, "My feet were born to dance too," I wanted to use a Florence Price waltz, because I was like, we're doing this about a woman. I'm a woman composer. Ashley's a woman poet. And I want to use an African-American woman composer. Unfortunately, it was not public domain. But when I did look up, so then I was like, okay, let me research some more. And that's one of my joys. I don't know if you ever research for poetry. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
It's one of my because the joy of just it's like being on a treasure hunt. So I looked up like African-American composers 1850s. And that's when I found the composer that we used, and I verbatim used his work. And I couldn't believe that there was a waltz in 5. I mean, waltzes are usually in 3.
Oh yeah.
And this one was in 5 specifically. And I thought that was so cool, because the other parts of that particular poem are set in 6. And Ashley's like, I wanted to kill you.
Yeah. I didn't want to kill you, but I did wonder. Does she know I don't know how to read music? Like, I just feel like she thinks I know something that I don't know.
No, it's really just like when I read that my feet were born to move. I wanted to do a slight variation in the meters, because the rap was in 4. And the second poem was various meters, kind of all over the place, because I wanted the orchestra to have a chance to speak, because it was also written for the kids to play, and back you up, but also have a few shining moments themselves. So that was that. And then I was like, well, I want to end the piece in 4, as like a regular train kind of feeling. That's not coming across over the Zoom, but my little moment here. Like, okay, I'm an elementary educator. You just have to pardon me. But but I wanted something that was like in 6, and then to have this waltz that was published at the same time as Harriet was escaping and making her way to Philadelphia. And this was a Philadelphia composer. Like that she may have actually heard this piece of music in, when she arrived in Philadelphia, and there was like a dance hall. It just like, there is a scene, I do have to say, the movie Harriet that came out in 2019 was very eye-opening for me in some ways. And one of those ways was just how good the African Americans in Philadelphia had it compared to where she came from, with dirt floors and cabins. And they had like fine clothes and, and dance halls and things. So I pictured her in your poem. I pictured her imagining some of these things that she had no, maybe she saw some of the privileged white people, enjoying some of these things, and was like, what about me? Like, I'm a human. I deserve happiness.
Right.
What is up with that? So, and it was amazing to me. how you portrayed in words her the blood. So I really wanted that to come across like the voice of God. It was truly an honor to work with you, Ashley. It was truly a blessing. And I do pray that as this piece goes forth, that maybe you'll get a chance to do this again with a professional group, or and just again, I mean, I feel like this needs to be out there. My mom, I don't know if I communicated this. My mom came to both live stream performances, and even though the visuals were not that satisfying because I had it all the way up in the balcony, she loved it. And everyone who watched it from the live stream loved it. And it was just a blessing. My mom said that she feels like this collaboration needs to be out there because of the healing that our nation needs. And I wonder if we could maybe just talk a little bit, and we don't need to stay on forever. I know we're both busy, but if we could just talk a little bit about the path of healing our nation's great wound of racism. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge wound, I guess I'll say first. And maybe I wonder if wound is even the word now that I think about it. It's maybe a recognition of the bones of this nation, like what we are actually built around. And so we will have to extract that. And that is painful, to do, to take one's bones away and put new ones there. So I've always thought that art is the way to start those conversations. And maybe because when I first came into being an artist, I was thinking about these things. As I mentioned, the Harriet Tubman poem was the one that got me into writing. And I wrote poems about social justice as a 7-year-old kid. Like, that made sense to me to explore these things through poetry. And even in other forms of art, I really think those pieces that we find the most moving and the most powerful have some root in some sort of change-making effort, some sort of social justice thing. And I found just in my career, because I write these historical poems and these poems about racism and identity, people are able to join the conversation much more easily if they have a common entry point, which is the poem or the piece of art or the piece of music, because they're coming into that without having to face another person's confrontation, I guess. And it goes both ways, really. I feel like I can have these conversations most easily through poems. It's harder when for example, somebody wants to argue at the airport with me. That's difficult. But being able to articulate myself, include other voices, that's also a thing that art can do that other things really can't. On a page, I can include a quote from Harriet Tubman or whoever it is that I'm writing about. I can include statistics from whatever thing it is I'm talking about. And the poem itself is sort of the thing that how do I want to say this? It sort of like lubricates the mind in a way.
Yes.
To be able to move through these very hard things, or even to swallow something that is extremely difficult to swallow. So if I'm reading you a poem about, the history of lynching in America, that's a hard thing for me and for you to think about.
Yes.
But because the art is there to like hold us through it, it's a little bit easier to formulate opinions, to discuss, and to be able to see something from somebody else's perspective. That's really the key to the whole how do we heal equation here in America, is actually truly trying to see something from someone else's perspective and looking at ourselves in an honest way. But we've never done that ever in this country at all. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I do think if the world were more, or if this country were more focused on, art and elevating the uses of art with children, especially, so that they start out in a more empathetic mode and they start out with curiosity and respect for other people and their culture, then moving forward, we wouldn't have all these issues. So I don't know, if I were president, I would just mandate that everybody do art all the time. But that's my thoughts on it.
Oh, I think you should run for president.
Oh gosh.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because I don't think we've had any artists in the White House.
No, and it shows. It shows.
Yeah. I will say that there have been presidents who have supported art more than others. So so that's been good. But don't ask me to list them out because I'm not
Yeah.
I'm really not a historical political person. One thing that I will say is that when I was in college, accidentally became part of a Christian group. I was 100% just wanted to be an orchestral bass player. I was not thinking about racism or intentional relationships with African Americans or anything like that. I did feel more comfortable around back in the early 90s, we called them minorities. And that was because they were nice to me. I was, I never felt accepted by the kind of status quo blondes. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that, but God had already set me on a path. And I believe I'm kind of here to like build bridges. And that's something I've been trying to do for most of my life. I guess some people call that being a peacemaker. I'm not a peaceful person, so I don't know if that works. I'm filled with a lot of anger.
Wow.
But
it happens. Yeah.
It happens. But Alex and I actually, you mentioned this, like we kind of have some things in common.
You do. Yeah.
And as we had some conversations, Alex, Maestro Fokkens, just to say it to folks, he comes from South Africa, where there has been a long history of injustice. And he shared with me some of that. And he has some anger in him as well. And I see that it is focused toward injustice. And that's like, the anger in me is definitely like injustice, related. But there is a verse in the Bible, and I do have to look this up to get the exact wording, but the righteousness of God is not accomplished by the sinfulness of man, or is it the anger of man? I have to look. But needless to say, my anger does nothing. And it may motivate me to make a change, but what really changed my life was when I was part of this InterVarsity chapter. There was an African American leader of the chapter, and we used to, in our meetings, in our large group meetings, he had us fill out paper and discuss, like, so how many African American friends do you have? What is stopping you from making friends with African American people or people of color? He really asked tough questions, and we had to look at ourselves. And when I first came in, I was like, well, and this is shameful, at 18 years old, I was like, well, I just don't want to be friends with someone who's not as smart as me. And I was like, and I had no idea that what I was saying was wrong in any way. And my friend Dana, who's African American, was sitting right next to me. And he just kind of was like, and I was like, what did I say? I literally had no idea what I said. And then I was like, oh, I was unintentionally including African Americans in the statement of people that might not be as smart as me. And that was really painful to discover that I was like an elitist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that I had that prejudice and that sin going on, even though I had friends that
Mm-hmm.
were different colors.
Mm-hmm.
Deep inside,
Mm-hmm.
I really believed that I was the smartest. Now, another person in InterVarsity pointed out, he was like, white people don't think of themselves as a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
We think of ourselves individually. So I have never thought of myself as like, well, I'm white, you know, and my people do this. I've always thought of myself as like, well, I'm Rebekah and I do this. But the issue is that people who look like me have chosen really sinful actions. And even if I haven't, I bear their same skin tone, their same features, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I differentiate myself? How can I quote justify myself? And the truth is that I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. And so one of the things that we did is we actually sought forgiveness. I sought forgiveness for what my people had done to African Americans. And very specifically, I taught in Jackson, Mississippi in the summer of 1996.
Mm.
And I taught music to K through 5. And I asked one question in class. I said, so have any of you been affected by racism? Now, this was 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, Mississippi. This was literally the wrong side of the track.
Mm.
And I mean, there were literally railroad tracks. And almost every single child in that 5th grade class had an example of how they had been prejudiced, you know, against them. And it broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
It really broke my heart. And I actually, now they laughed at me because they were kids and they were immature, but I hope that they remember this someday in their lives and was like, well, at least one of them cared. But like, I asked their forgiveness. I was like, you guys, this breaks my heart. And on behalf of white people, I just want to ask your forgiveness for our sin, you know, to your people. And they were kind of like,
yeah.
It's like, what do you do? Like in terms of like what you're saying, having a poem is really nice because it's not directly like I have sinned.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, let's look at this from like a distance, you know, but I was taught to directly confront these issues. And I became broken after that summer. And I came back and I started going to a gospel church called Mount Sinai Missionary Baptist Church. And I went to the African American Students Association and played dominoes and sought out African American friends. And they all kind of laughed at me and thought I was weird. And at the church too, I mean, I joined the gospel choir and Gloria grabbed my sweater from the back so that I could sway the right way.
That's hilarious.
And okay, so here I am, like this really quote unquote amazing musician on scholarship, getting like 3 degrees, you know, and I'm like, I can't even sway the right way in the gospel choir. I learned so much in those 4 years at that church. And I will always be an outsider. But I would like to consider myself an ally. And, you know, so even I married an African-American man, but I'm still an outsider. And it's not like I'll ever be like, oh, I just fit in with Black. No, but I am here. I don't fit in. I'm weird, but I'm here and I love you and I want the best for you. So that's my goal. I don't know. I probably won't even put this on a video either.
It's good. I'm curious to know if you can sway still. Like, do you have the innate swaying?
Oh, you mean yeah, it's gotten okay. My hips have loosened up. I've gotten a little better. Another experience at that church from a musical point, I played electric bass.
Oh, wow.
I had done a lot of charts like growing up, I played jazz. And even in 7th grade, I remember thinking, because I had grown up playing classical music on the piano. And here I was playing charts where there was no written down notes. Now, I just didn't like to feel insecure and not have notes in front of me. But what I said was, jazz isn't real music because it's not written down. 12 years old. And that was like, I didn't know what I was saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I was saying to myself was, I am scared and I don't want to play this because I don't know what notes to play. But because I didn't know the language. But and it took me like a long time to be able to do that. So now I relied on charts, at least, which had the chords. Even if they don't have the notes written out, at least they have the chords. My choir director, very young, had been raised in the church, was like 21, and already he was a wizard on the foot pedals on the organ. He was like, his feet were like
Oh wow,
all over the foot pedals, like while he was doing both hands on the top on the organ. I mean, and so as a bass player, I'm supposed to play with his foot pedals. And I watched him and I was like, Marcus, why can't I have charts? And he was like, no charts. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I hate you. Because I was so insecure.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, but I watched his feet and I learned how to play better than I had ever played before because of the chromatic leads in. He was doing like, if it was like a C chord coming up, he would play B going into the C. I watched his feet. And I learned old school, you know, how to do it. And I think, you know, I haven't made my career as a jazz player, but that definitely informed everything. You know, it's a completely amazing culture. And I came away from 1996 in Jackson with Spencer Perkins and Chris Rice, who were pursuing racial reconciliation, a Black family and a white family together living in a home that just had one door, but it was like a joined house. And their families were, you know, freely playing with each other. And they talked about how difficult that was.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Spencer Perkins was taken from us in his late 40s by a heart attack. But I did get to meet him in that, you know, in that year. And John Perkins, his father, who started the movement at the time in the church, the racial reconciliation movement. Something I read recently that really made me sad was that there are African Americans who have completely given up on this because of the brutality in recent years. It's been like a return to white brutality, and they've given up on racial reconciliation, and that actually makes me really, really sad, because that was something in my 20s that changed my life, and my family is my family because God changed me and showed me these beautiful people who love him. And I'm sorry, you know, this was something that really changed my life. And to think that now we're giving up on it, and now we're back to hating each other, and that there's no hope of being, you know, a bridge. Terry with the tissues, but you know, that there's no hope of being a bridge anymore, and that I will always have to rebuild my trust, rebuild the trust. And I think that's maybe something that this doesn't get talked about between Blacks and whites, you know, is like, there is a gaping wound that gets covered over and scabbed by anger. And I don't know. I guess I just really appreciate, as someone who's an outsider, who's, you know, you notice that I have not used the word woke, because I don't really like that word. I'm not gonna lie. It's become trendy, and like, I don't think that white people feeling bad actually does anything.
It doesn't at all. It doesn't.
You know, I'm like, go out and make some friends that are African American, build the trust, sin against them in a normal way that's not racist related and be human. And maybe we can forgive each other and just be humans and not hate each other. And but that's Chris Rice and Spencer Perkins, when their family, they talked about a lot about how that was very difficult for them. But anyway, so I don't know. I just talked a lot.
It's okay. I think also I realized, well, I also see the time, but I wanted to say you were doing all this in 96.
Yeah.
My awakening, if you will, with the poem was 97.
Oh, wow.
So it's very close, time period. I mean, I was 7, but still something was in the air, for each of us during that time.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting. My husband was on tour in Europe with the Continental Singers. And my background is German, and he was staying with a German family.
Wow.
So the same summer that I was learning about African American culture.
Wow. That's so cool. He was learning about German culture. Yeah.
Yes. And 5 years later, we met.
Wow.
And we were talking on the phone, and he started talking in a fake German accent, and I just died laughing. And that was one of the things that won me over, because a lot of people who have known me through the years, know, just I'm super intense, but I'm also a super intense goofball. And I could not be with someone who was just serious all the time.
Yeah, I feel the same way about me. People think I'm a very serious person, which I am when it's time to be serious. But I'm also extremely silly. I don't always show that side of myself. It's a special protected part. But because it's really vulnerable to be that silly or to, express yourself completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely could not be partnered with somebody who couldn't go there with me in silliness.
Agreed. Ashley, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you for your artwork. Thank you for your openness to working. Thank you. And I hope that we can work together again somehow in the future. And you are definitely in my thoughts and prayers from now until eternity.
Wow, thank you. I'm very grateful to have worked with you, and I'm sure we'll be working together again. I can feel it, so.
I can too. And it's not just because you're amazing. It's because I actually like you.
Oh, thank you. I like you too, Rebekah.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, have a blessed day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.